Is your life a little stormy at the moment? I've had a few storms this week. Had a bit of a real one when my bin got blown over at 4 o'clock in the morning and the noise woke me up. Had to go out to the street in the wind and the rain to sort it out. But I've been thinking about storms. At a funeral a week ago, we listened to a hymn and it included the lines, "The storms of life." I think I've had a few storms this week. I discovered I had a friend who was in hospital. I've had all sorts of appointments and deadlines. Then in the wider world, we've got the big storm, the coronavirus pandemic. We've got some extra restrictions here. We've got schools off and the other restrictions. In the Republic, they've moved into a full lockdown. And that storm comes with loss of jobs, people who've died. Comes with feeling afraid. Comes with feeling alone. And that's what makes facing the storms of life worse. That feeling of being alone. I mean, we may have family, friends, community, even church. But very often, we feel as if we're on our own. Even as Christians, we know that Jesus is with us, but we've been taught about it, we've read it, we've heard it, but even we can feel abandoned. Even we can sometimes ask, does God really care? So as I was reflecting and thinking about the storms of life, I was reminded this week of a story in the Bible. A story of a group of people who find themselves in a storm. And in the middle of a storm, they cry out to God saying, "Don't you care?" That evening, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the east side." So they left the crowds, and his disciples started to cross the lake with him in the boat. Some other boats followed along. Suddenly, a windstorm struck the lake. Waves started splashing into the boat, and it was about to sink. Jesus was in the back of the boat with his head on a pillow, and he was asleep. His disciples woke him and said, "Teacher, don't you care that we're about to drown?" Jesus got up and ordered the wind and the waves to be quiet. The wind stopped and everything was calm. Jesus asked his disciples, "Why were you afraid? Don't you have any faith?" Now they were more afraid than ever and said to each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." The first thing to notice about this story is that this is a serious situation. They're on a boat going across the lake when the weather turns against them. There's a windstorm, there's waves, and the boat is sinking. Now, you've got to realise this is serious. These disciples, most of them are used to this lake. They've lived by it or on the shores of it. And some of them on that boat are working fishermen. People who know what lake life is like. So if they're afraid, this is serious. I've been on a couple of choppy boats. I remember being on a cross-channel ferry one winter, and I was okay when the boat went that way. I was okay when it went that way. I was okay when it went that way. But it's when it did all three at once that I started to feel a bit funny. But it was a short journey. I just about survived. My worst experience on a boat would have been along the Amalfi coast. There'd been a bit of rain early in the morning and now it was windy. And we were on a small boat going fast against the waves. And I got to tell you, I was sick. I spent most of that journey by the side of the boat, either being sick or trying not to be sick. You see, waves don't need to be big to be overwhelming. In fact, the closest I've come to drowning has not been at sea. It's been on a little rubber inflatable raft on a lake, holding onto the side when my feet didn't touch the bottom. No waves there, but I almost drowned. The waves don't have to be big for us to worry about it. And this fishing boat that the disciples are on probably had a very low side, so it doesn't need much water to come in to make it unstable. So all this tells us that this is serious, and it also tells us about the reality of the situation. It tells us that all of our storms are different. It tells us that our waves can be big or they can be small. It also says it doesn't matter what the waves look like to other people. When you're in the storm, it's all consuming. Even the professional fishermen felt lost. But not only are these professional fishermen frightened, they're also in that boat feeling alone. Are they really alone? No. There's someone else in the boat. Just think back for a moment. Why are they in the boat? Jesus had used this boat as a pulpit all day long. The crowds had been so big that he had to teach from the boat. The disciples had front row seats to the greatest teacher that the world has ever seen. So let me ask that question again. Who else was in the boat? Jesus. What is he doing? He's asleep on a pillow. Now, there's a really important point here. In the middle of the storm, we often forget the teaching. In the middle of the storm, we often forget that Jesus is there. We're distracted by the wind and the waves and the storm. So if you know someone going through the storms, now's not the time to say to them, "Oh, don't they know that God's with them? Don't they know it's going to be okay?" In the storm, we forget these things. In the storm, knowledge, logic, and ration goes away. And it's replaced by fear. It's replaced by feeling alone. And so the disciples cry out, and if we're honest, we cry out, "Do you not care that we're drowning?" Jesus wakes up and he says 2 words. Well, at least that's what it says in the Greek Bible. So what does Jesus say? Well, I'm sure many of you will remember the way it's put in the King James Version. Peace, be still. But actually, the 2 words Jesus says are much, much more powerful than that. Let me show you. It was the noise of the wind and the bin as it crashed down the street that woke me up this week. Because storms are noisy. Like a bad radio station or traffic outside or those people digging up the roads to put the gas mains in. The noise from the storms of life take over. The noise means we can't concentrate. We can't think. The noise distracts us. The noise tires us. The noise drives us to the end of our tether. The noise is just maddening. The noise is the storm. Another little image here. Have you ever seen a dog that's out of control? Maybe you've seen a rabid dog somewhere. Have you seen a dog that's barking incessantly? A dog that's baring its teeth? A dog that's attacking everything? A dog that's too powerful, that's straining at the leash, that's going to go and attack something? Is your storm like that dog? Is your storm too powerful, too frightening, too strong, too destructive? You see, the 2 words that Jesus said are commands. So he says, be silent. It's in the word there, it's one word. Be silent, and be, again, it's a command, it's in that word. Be muzzled. Be silent, be muzzled. Now, do you see why these are so powerful words? Jesus silences the storm. Not just the wind, not just the waves. Jesus silences that little voice of doubt or fear inside your head. Jesus silences the shouts of those around you. Jesus silences the noise of questions. The noise that was driving you to distraction is switched off. Jesus also muzzles the storm. Not just the wind and the waves, whatever the storm has that has you in its grip, whatever storm is baying for your blood or threatening you, whatever storm is trying to attack you, Jesus silences and Jesus muzzles the storm. We feel alone. We feel helpless. But Jesus literally sails to our rescue. And in case you're doubting his ability, this story makes it clear that he has the power. If you read through the Gospels, that phrase, that one word or two in the English language, be silent, will be very familiar to you. Mark even uses this near the start of Jesus' ministry. You see, it's the words that Jesus uses when he casts out demons. So what Jesus is saying here is that he is more powerful than the most demonic storm. Jesus is saying he's more powerful than the devil. I'm sure you'd agree, that's pretty powerful. But there's even more. The word for windstorm makes us go back and think of the words used in Job's account of creation. It also reminds us of the words that were spoken over the stormy deep that called our world into being at the very beginning of the Bible. They tell us that Jesus has the power over nature and creation. But of course he does. He's the creator. But stop for a moment and think about your storms. Think about the storms that are buffeting your life. Are they any match for the one with power over the devil and the power of the creator of the universe? I don't think so. So Jesus wakes up, he calms the storm, he demonstrates his power, and then he turns to the disciples and he asks them why they were afraid. Now, I don't think this is a kind of rebuke. I don't think he's telling them off. That wouldn't fit what we know about Jesus from other stories, what we see in Jesus in his life and character. A look at the context and language here helps us see that Jesus is more likely asking a different question. Jesus is saying, "Why are you afraid? Do you not yet trust in me? Are you still without trust in me?" And this teaches us an important lesson. Faith comes from experience, not from teaching. After all, the disciples have just had a full day's kingdom instruction, yet they don't have it. It takes this experience of God on the boat for them to gain faith. It's this experience that makes them realize that Jesus is God, not a Bible study. Were they alone in the storm, in the boat? No. Jesus was there. But sometimes this story tells us, sometimes we don't recognize his presence. We might cry out, "Do you care?" We might feel that we're alone, only to discover that Jesus has been in the boat all along. Even when he's silent, or asleep in this story, he's there with us in the middle of our lives of storm and struggle. No matter how dangerous or difficult it appears, he is with us in the boat. We are safe if we are in the boat with Jesus. Does he care? Well, yes. He's there with us. Are you battered by storms? Are you feeling alone? Are you shouting out to God, "Do you care?" Today, believe me when I tell you, God cares. He's in the boat with you. And there's no limit to what he can accomplish on your behalf. Today, listen to him as he tells the storms to be silent and be muzzled. Jesus is in your boat. Why don't you sit next to him and trust him to get you to the other side? Fear not. God is with us, stilling the storms and raging fears in our lives. Place your trust in God always.